Hello and welcome to this live hangout. And about once a month we do history and politics here on this channel, and people asked for me to do it more like once a week, but I said no, once a month is enough, I think. And today is South Africa. And last month we did Rhodesia, the story of Rhodesia. Not the story, but let's say a history of Rhodesia. Obviously I can't cover everything in an hour or 45 minutes. So South Africa, boy, I used to hear about South Africa every day of my life in the 1980s. I have this Cat's Away India Pale Ale from Trouble Brewing, Rochester, New York. Okay. $12.56 plus tax at Walmart, not a bad deal. Is it ideal? Is it outstanding, world class? No, I don't think you're going to get that for $12.56 a 12-pack. Is it serviceable? Yeah. All right. 5.8% alcohol. That sounds about right. Sounds like something I would want to drink, and I'm going to drink it. Okay, so South Africa. Okay, interesting history. Africa, 8 miles from Europe, right? Across the Strait of Gibraltar. So the Egyptians, well, Egypt is an African country, so they used to go in there and raid down in Nubia. And at sometimes they would control Nubia. And at one time, the Nubians took over Egypt and intermixed with them forcibly. And I guess, good afternoon, Ron. This should be an interesting one. I think so, John and Elaine. And anyone's welcome to join if you'd like, by the way. Just tell me and I'll send you an invite. We like to do counterpoint, counterpoint. People can give their opinion, their viewpoints. Okay, so, and the Arabs in Arabia, makes sense, Arabia, they would go down to Eastern Africa, all the way down to what today is Tanganyika and Zanzibar, Tanzania, raiding and setting up colonies, capturing people for various purposes. And the Arabs even ruled Zanzibar up until the British came in the I believe it was the 1860s, and took over and made it a colony. Okay, so while Africa was largely ignored, however, especially the interior, there were all kind of ideas about what the people were like down there, people, like giants or people with a one huge foot and all this stuff. But well, we know Columbus discovered America for the Western world. People say, oh, well, the Vikings were the first ones there. They discovered America. Yeah, but if you discover something and you don't bother telling anybody, guess what? You don't get credit, okay? If I discover a cure for cancer and I don't bother telling anybody, and then 20 years later somebody cures cancer and tells everyone, I'm not getting the credit, sorry. Nice aroma, bready, sweet and sour. So then the Europeans got very interested in colonization. The Chinese started this project in the Middle Ages, late Middle Ages, Renaissance days. The Chinese sent an expedition out to Africa with a bunch of ships, say, let's go look at Africa. Oh, interesting. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Indian Ocean. Oh, yeah, really interesting. Got some islands. India and all this. But the Chinese decided, we don't care about colonies. We have China, this big empire, and we don't care about the rest of the world, so forget about them. They just had no interest in setting up colonies. China is a country next to the ocean, so it makes sense that they would do that. Now, the Europeans, they're out. Many of the countries, Portugal, the first European exploratory country, Spain, of course, France, the Netherlands, Denmark, Sweden, England. All right. So they are maritime countries. They're interested in exploring. So they start exploring, and they go to North America, they go to South America, they go to Mesoamerica, they go to Africa, they go to all the way around to India, the East Indies, China, the Pacific Ocean eventually. Okay, Magellan goes all the way around the world in the 1500s, right? So they go all around the world with a large amount of government sponsorship, but not completely government sponsorship. Oftentimes it was independent companies, government chartered companies like the East India Company, okay, or the West Indies Company, okay, or the Hudson Bay Company, all right, whatever, the Virginia Company, so on and so on, okay. So they're going all over the world. They went to some of these isolated islands in the Pacific, Atlantic, like St. Helena Island, Tristan da Cunha, Ascension Island, which the British still own today, by the way. The Falklands, another one, still owned by the British, South Georgia Island. The Dutch, having broken away from Spain, 1648, that was the finality there, final breaking point. End of the 30 Years' War. The Dutch states, the Union of Dutch States, and after 1815, the Kingdom of the Netherlands, they start exploring the world. They set up New Amsterdam, New York City today, New Netherlands, New York, Curacao, Aruba, Bonaire, St. Eustatius, still Dutch territories today, by the way, I might add. And another place the Indonesia, all of that. New Guinea. Another place they went to was Southern Africa, Cape Town, or the Cape of Good Hope, which originally was explored by the Portuguese, remember, then the Spanish. They had to get around Africa, and finally they made it around, and then keep going. And so the Dutch say, "Oh yeah, we're going to set up a colony down here at Table Mountain, this huge mountain, kind of like Lookout Mountain in Georgia and Tennessee and Alabama. Oh, let's set up a colony, Cape Town, Cape Colony, a Dutch colony." Okay, so a bunch of Dutch Calvinists start moving down there. No big deal, you know, set up a colony. They did it all over the world. We're not endorsing colonialism or imperialism here. We're just talking about it. Okay, the English go down there. They start exploring, setting up colonies all around, you know, Gambia, eventually Gambia. Oh, you know, the Spanish do Spanish Equatorial Africa. And I'm not going to go through all these colonies. I could go through all of them. I'm not going to. So, all right. The English are over there. They eventually settle in a colony called Natal, Christmas Day, the birth of Christ. Nativity scene, Natal. Okay. The English are over there doing their thing. The Dutch are over there in the western part doing their thing. They leave each other alone. Everything's copacetic. There's the black tribes. They very primitive, so they, they hire them to do work. There's really no slavery in that situation down there. So they, it's kind of like minding each other's own business. So, but then you had this explosion in the world called the Revolution. Well, people call it the French Revolution, but really, it's really the world revolution that happened to start in France. That would be the more accurate definition of it. The world revolution, and to be even more frank, the communist revolution to overthrow civilization as we know it, which started in France formally, but actually earlier than that, formally on July 14th, 1789, but really took root in Bavaria before that, May 1st. 1776. But we're not going to get into Baron Weishaupt and all of that, you know. Okay. So they launched the revolution in France. The king is murdered. The queen is murdered. The new king, the legitimate king, Louis the 17th, Bourbon, is murdered by these communists. Okay. So then they show they're talking about power to the people. It's you know, it's all about a people's revolution. Yeah, sure, right. But what it turns out to be is France, these revolutionaries in France trying to take over Europe, kind of like a Hitler before there's Hitler. Okay. And so the French invaded the Netherlands and take it over, which today would be Belgium, Luxembourg, and the Netherlands itself, the Low Countries. And they conquer it and make it part of France. And then they annex all parts of Germany, all kind of parts of Germany, northern Italy, what is today or used to be Yugoslavia. That's how big the French Empire got, trying to take over everything. Napoleon and all of them, that gang. So, and this war is being fought all over the world. North America, South America, the Caribbean, the Indian Ocean, East Indies, everywhere, India. All right. And of course, South Africa. So when the French conquered the Netherlands, then the British say, oh, well, we're going to attack all French assets. We don't want the French taking over Louisiana. That's why Louisiana became a U.S. territory, because of all of this. And we don't want the French taking over Cape Colony, the Cape of Good Hope. So the British captured it from the Dutch, but, you know, from the French is really what they did. Okay. Well, Napoleon, you know, he bit off more than he could chew, so he got destroyed in 1815, and it was just too bad for him, but he did it to himself, so tough luck. Now, they had this big meeting in Vienna, Austria. They're going to talk about what we're going to do with Europe. Europe's in like disarray. We got to reconstitute Europe, the Congress of Vienna. You might be saying, what the hell does this have to do with South Africa? It has everything to do with it, but actually. So we talked about that. I made a whole video series called Nationalistic Chain Reactions in Europe, 1815 to 1914. Remember that? So the people that win get the prizes. I mean, you know how that's going to work. Sweden was on the winning side, so they got to take over Norway from Denmark. Denmark made a mistake of sticking with Napoleon, and they lost a lot of their territories. The Netherlands, they were conquered, and so one of the prizes that the British got was Cape Colony at the Congress of Vienna. So they say, well, the British were one of the big winners. They were financed by Lord Rothschild, and that's a whole nother story. Lord Rothschild, you know what I'm talking about. So, okay, so the British get a bunch of prizes. Oh, one of the prizes they get is Cape Colony. So now they got two colonies down there. Cape Colony, the capital, Cape Town, and Natal. Oh, boy. Well, in the capital, Durban. So the British take over. Okay, we're Great Britain, the world's most fantastic country with King George III, the most fantastic king, and all of that stuff. So you Dutch people are going to just have to deal with it, with your wooden shoes and your stink and rot and Calvinism, which is so inferior to the great Anglican Church of England. You know, this is how the British think. Hey, Ron, what beer are you drinking? Oh, I'm drinking Cat's Away IPA. Alex, the beer master, asks. You know, I mean, but so the British take over. And now the Dutch say, oh, no, we can't be under the British control. We don't like the British. We want to be Dutch people with the Calvinist religion, the Reformed Church. We got to get out of here. These British, they eat all this pork pies, and they all want to have Boxing Day, you know. So the Dutch say, we're getting out of here. Now, I mean, some stayed, but a lot of them just got this idea, we're getting out of, and we're going to make a new colony. We're going to the interior. So they packed up, like literally, and they left. The Voortrekkers. They're going to trek inland to the great plateau of southern Africa and the Drakensberg Mountains in that area, the Dragontown Mountains, Dragontown Mountains. And so they go into the interior and they set up some new Dutch, or they call themselves Afrikaners, the Dutch white tribe. And a lot of French Huguenots too, by the way, French Huguenots, Calvinist, but à la Francais. Okay, so they go there and they set up two new colonies, the South African Republic, or Transvaal, across the Vaal River, and the Orange Free State, Orange Free State. The House of Orange, the royal family of the Netherlands, right? William of Orange, Saint, you know what I'm talking about? All right, so now we got the Dutch up there in the interior of Southern Africa, the Orange Free State, and their capital, Pretoria, and Transvaal, and they got all the Dutch towns, the Bloemfontein and the Mafeking and the Pretoria, and the British have Cape Colony, oh boy, and they've got Durban, don't you know, all these wonderful things. Laissez le bon temps rouler, says Dr. Frosty Brew. Were the Calvinists the first to break away from the Roman Catholic Church, says John and Neely? No. No, that would be Martin Luther. Well, there were others before that, but Martin Luther was the first guy, you know, the modern guy in 1517. Martin Luther in Germany, the Lutherans. The Calvinists came later with John Calvin, of the Swiss guy. Okay. So now you got the Dutch farmers, or Boers, the farmers, the Boers, the British call them Boers, the farmers, those ignorant farmers. Let them grow a bunch of crops. And so they kind of like was a truce. The Dutch had their Transvaal, or South African Republic, and their Orange Free State, and the British down in the south east have Natal, British colony, Durban, and in the southwest, Cape Town, Cape Colony. Everything's quiet. You stay out of our way, and we're going to stay out of your way. And then, of course, the Zulus were coming south. And so the Dutch fought a bunch of battles and wars with the Zulu tribe. But then they kind of like made peace, like, okay, all right. You leave us alone, and we're going to leave you alone. You don't like us, we don't like you. You're black, we're white. Okay, but we can agree to disagree. In other words, we'll stay out of your way, you stay out of our way. And then some way we'll trade with each other, and we don't really care what you do, Zulus, and you don't care what we do. Mutual understanding, left each other alone. Okay. Oh my gosh, but one day a little child was playing down by the river. And she says, oh, Papa, look at the shiny pebble. Look at the shiny pebble. Well, oh, that's not a pebble. That's like the biggest diamond in the history of the world. This rough, you know, natural diamond, the Star of Africa, which is in the royal family of England's crown, right? You know. Oh, well, that was it. And then they find the shiny yellow metal, gold. Once they realized that South Africa was full of diamond veins, and I mean a lot, diamonds everywhere, diamonds, 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 the world's most bountiful supply of high-grade diamonds and the gold. Guess what? The British went berserk. Because money is not evil. People say that. The Bible says money is the root of all evil. No, the Bible doesn't say that. Wrong. The Bible says the love of money is the root of all evil. So the British love money like most people do, and they say, "Ooh, wow, we got to get the diamonds, we got to get the gold." Well, we can't just go grab these Dutch people's countries, because that would look like Napoleon, you know, grabbing people's land. We're British. We don't go grab people's land. We find a pretext. You know, the British, they're very clever. They always find a pretext. You know, they have to go to war because other people are so impertinent. You understand? They have a nasty, uncultivated attitude that is just undignified in many, many, many ways. So in the British way, Junior's Brew Review says, "What's up? Just talking about South Africa." Hey, Junior. So, well, you know what happens. The British find their pretext. They're going to always find a pretext. You say, did the United States ever find a pretext? I don't know. Where were you in March 2003? Ha, 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 ha. All right. So, oh, these nasty Dutch, they're doing all these terrible things that nobody ever heard about. Well, you know, they start attacking them for defensive purposes only, of course. Oh boy. Oh well. Those nasty Dutch farmers, those common folk, they fight back like nasty devils. I must declare, most troublesome. Well, the Dutch fight back pretty hard, you know. So, well, eventually they're very primitive in as far as their technology. So the Dutch, sort of in a kind of way, they come under the control of the British, but they make a truce. We're talking about the 1870s, 1880s, and then the British got into a war with the Zulus. But they found a pretext, you know, in 1879 because they had to attack them because those Zulus, you know how those people are. Okay. And they're doing all kind of conniving, all kind of scheming. Even Cecil John Rhodes, I could mention Cecil John Rhodes came up with a whole big plan to go invading the Belly Land and set up a new country called Rhodesia, which became an English colony until 1980. But I don't want to go into all of that. But it might have had something to do with gold and a bountiful, luxurious amount of minerals, but anyway, you know, but why get into all of that? Because these people have this habit of grabbing everything they ever saw in their life, but why go into all these things now? Okay. So it's kind of like another truce, you know. The Dutch say, "Ah, you damn British, you know, why can't we just grow our vegetables and you leave us alone?" Oh, well, we'd love to leave you alone, but your country's full of diamonds and gold. Diamonds and gold. All right, so, oh, well, they just had to keep needling these Dutch people. Now, the Dutch are funny people, you know, because they sort of fanatical, you know, and they're up there in Transvaal, South African Republic, and Orange Free State, Orange Free State, and they got Kruger, the President Kruger, an old Calvinist fanatic, you know. So they say, "Oh, these British, they keep bothering us. They never stop bothering you." Yeah, maybe they're trying to get you to react. Maybe. And, you know, maybe they're trying to get you to fire the first shot because then you're the aggressor. See, you started it. You know how that works. Paul Urbear says, "Get me some Krugerrands." Yeah, Krugerrand. You can join, Paul. Oh, well, you know how it goes. In 1899, the Dutch got tired. You know how people just get tired of being, I don't know, bothered consistently for 20 straight years. So the Dutch say, "Okay, that's it. Those damn British, just like Lincoln at Fort Sumter. Well, let's not let things like facts get in the way of a good narrative, right? So, says Paul Lincoln at Fort Sumter, right? So the British say, all we're doing is bothering the piss out of you for 20 years. Why do you have to attack us? So the Dutch, but the British got shocked. Sometimes they go too far and they get hit and they can't believe it. So the Dutch hit them hard. Oh, I mean hard. 1899, they launched the Orange Free State and the Republic of South Africa, the South African Republic. They start hitting the British heavy, and I mean beating the you-know-what out of them. I was going to say beating the mess out of them. Ooh, we can't believe it. These incompetent farmers are whipping the great and unimaginably wonderful British Empire. How could this be? They got them on the run. Oh, those Dutch got the British on the run. They got a siege of Mafeking. They got them under siege. They are busting their behinds. Yeah, but there's only one problem with that. You're messing with like the wrong people, because the British, they don't have a habit of losing a whole lot. You know what I mean? Like they just kind of like never lose a war, since 1689, they got that habit. So you say, well, sounds like maybe the people got set up. Yeah, it sounds like they might have. But anyway, so okay. They catching hell a little bit more than they thought, actually. And it's funny, this is a funny, kind of really funny in a way, kind of situation. The British caught hell the first couple of months of the war. And when the Dutch win the big victory, Bloemfontein and all this really freaked the British out. And I mean, freaked them out, like scared them. They got really freaked out. Because the German government over there in Berlin sent a telegram to Pretoria saying, congratulations on your great victory over the British down in Southern Africa. And the British government in London said, well, why are the Germans sending the Dutch a congratulatory letter on a victory over us? So that's it. The British say, whoa. Now see, we thought Russia was the big bad guy. We've been plotting against them since 1815. So on a dime, they say, no, let's put Russia on the back burner now. We got a new problem. And the problem is Germany. So right at that point, 1899, the British say, well, how about that? Looks like we got another project and we got another problem to solve. Okay. Good. That's good. Okay, we're going to handle this problem. So then you're going to notice that in history, there's a big conflict that starts to build between London and Berlin after that, which of course we know comes to a head on August 1st, 1914. And then it reaches another climax September 1st, September 3rd, 1939, with round two. And then once that's knocked out the way, then they go back to the old faux Russia. But anyway, oh yeah, that's right, the Cold War's still going on. I forgot about that. But anyway, Paul Aubert says, the Atlanticists have been trying to squash the Eastern nations for forever. They sure did a number on Germany in the 20th century. Right. Well, let's go down to South Africa. That's kind of like part of the same story, but let's go into that now. All right. He says, Russia bad. Russia bad. America, England good. Right. That's the mantra, right? Okay, so not a bad IPA. I'm going to have to get some water in a minute. Okay, so well, the problem is the Dutch, they're giving the English hell, and they think we're going to win, we're going to win the war, Well, you're not going to win the war, okay? Because no country in the world is going to out ruthless England. You know what I mean? It's like these are past masters of ruthlessness. I don't know if you ever knew that, but so they start bringing in Canadian troops, Indian Empire troops, Scottish troops, Irish troops, English troops, Australian soldiers, New Zealander soldiers. You know what I mean? Like, you know what's going to happen. You know the script. They start counterattacking. That's when the British adopted the khaki uniform, by the way, because the Dutch would be up in those hills with those high-powered long-range rifles and picking off those red coats. Beautiful target out there in that dry, tan, semi-arid area. That's when they adopted the khaki. You may not have known that. So they start to kind of like turn the tide and start busting up the Dutch, and the Dutch are kind of caught off guard, you know. But I don't know why they thought they were going to win. Just people, this goes on today. They think, I don't know, they just think they're going to win. But you're not going to win because you've been set up. You see what I'm saying? It's like you're in the play. You don't understand that you're part of the play. You don't realize that. All right, so but these Dutch, these guys, they keep fighting. They're killing too many English and Canadians and Australians and New Zealanders and Irish and Scottish, you know what I mean, Welsh, so Welsh guards. So they say, kind of like you talked about Lincoln, kind of like Lincoln in 1864. Well, gosh darn it, dang it, and heck. Alex says, hey, Ron, have a wonderful night and a wonderful day. Talk to you later. You too, Alex. You can watch the rest of the video later. So the English say, oh, yeah. Kind of like Lincoln, like I said, in 1864. We can't get these troops to give up. They keep shooting too many of our guys. These son of a guns keep fighting back. What's going on? They're killing our guys. This thing could drag on for who knows how long. What do you do if you can't beat the army? Well, at least you can't make them give up. Oh, right. You attack the civilians. Well, it worked very well in 1864, 1865. You bring the war to the women, the children, the old women, the old men walking with a cane, and the babies in the crib. When you terrorize the civilian population, you destroy the morale of the country, then you can win. You say, now you might be telling me that's not the way a man fights. A man fights man to man, face to face. You don't attack old people in a you know, walking with a cane, or a baby in a crib. Oh, I didn't say you should do that. I'm saying this is what they did, you know. So so that worked. 1865, they go after the civilians, and then the country surrenders, and the United States wins. And not to say that the leader of the country that did the war on civilians got out without a freelance response at a, you know, a playhouse, what, you know, but so the British decide 1901, 1902, well, hell, we'll just take the war to the civilians. So then they start, and this will be a fascinating thing for you. They start rounding up all the civilians, the women, the children, the old people with the canes, and the sick beds, putting them in these camps where they pack them together like sardines. They say, we can't find the soldiers, they hide in the hills, so we'll pack the women and the children in the camps. What the British came up with a term, they call it concentration camps. We'll concentrate the people in the camps, these concentration camps. Oh, well, I mean, you know, the people will get all kind of terrible diseases, and they'll all die. The children will die, and the women will die, and there'll be a tremendously high civilian casualty rate. But well, you know, these things happen. You know, why worry about these things? All right, so Chad Redden says concentration camps, where they concentrated the camps. Yeah. So then the British basically tell the Dutch, the Boers, all right, well, you know, you can stay in the hills and fight and kill a bunch of us. It doesn't matter to us. But all the people there down there in the camps that are going to all starve to death and die, with diseases. And so it's up to you. You want to let them all die, So finally the Dutch said, oh, yeah, okay, I'm going to go get some water and we'll come back. All right. All right, so the Dutch, they get very disgusted. They say, oh, that's a dirty way to play it. That's a dirty way to play it. That's not right. Going to attack defenseless civilians. The British say, well, where have you been? You didn't read the book? Forgot to read the script or something. So they surrendered. 1902, they give up. Now, Queen Victoria apparently got so stressed out over the war, she died, not young, obviously, in her 80s, but younger than maybe she should have died because of the stress. Apparently, she was really upset about this war and how they were catching hell, but anyway. So, from what I read. But the British take over. Oh, that's it. We got you. We got you. We got you. We got the diamonds. We got the gold. And now Chad Redden says, sarcasm. Gee, I thought only the evil Nazis used concentration camps. Right. That's right. That's what they say on TV, Chad. That's what they say on TV. 8 days a week. But I don't want to get into the atrocities of World War II right now, whether we're talking about the real or the surreal events. But so, okay, they got it. They got it. It's over. We got it. The British said, we got it. We got you. Hey, you're messing with the best, They said it on TV, so it must be true, says Chad. Right. And only against one certain group at that. Yeah. Right. All right. So, all right. Not only do we have Cape Colony and Natal, now we got Orange Free State and we got Transvaal. Oh, yeah, we got it. Okay. So the British decide, well, now let's make a new country, because they made a country over there in North America called Canada, where they combined a bunch of colonies and made America. Canada. And then they took a bunch of states and put them together down there in Australia and made a new country called the Commonwealth of Australia. All right. Well, New Zealand was just one state, so they just made New Zealand, But they said, well, let's do that down here. And in England, they made England, Ireland, Scotland, and Wales, and made the United Kingdom, another thing, put together country. So let's make another federation down there. And so in 1910, they made a new country called the Dominion of South Africa, the Dominion of South Africa, which was a new British colony, like one of these super colonies. The capital, well, they had a weird capital because like the legislature was in one city. What was it? Cape Town, and then the executive branch was in Pretoria, and like the judicial branch was in Durban or something like that. It's like they had more than one capital. That was like to placate everybody, like, you know what I mean? The Dutch, you can speak Dutch in the Dutch territories, and you can speak English in the English territories, and the black people, the Bantus, they call them, can speak whatever African, because there was 10 main tribes down there. You could speak whatever language you want. And then inside of South Africa, they had Lesotho, Basuto land, and they didn't want to make that part of South Africa, so they let that be a separate country, which it still is today. It's one of those countries inside of a country. And then Swaziland, they made that a separate, they let that be a separate, because it's all like one tribe. And then Lesotho was all like one tribe, the Basutos. So, well, they can have their own country. The Basuto tribe can have Basuto land, Lesotho today, and the Swazis can have Swaziland. All right. So now it's wonderful. Everybody's happy. We're part of this great British Empire, and then we can build a railroad from Cape Town to Cairo, Cape Town to Cairo, from Cairo to Cape Town, from Cape Town to Cairo. We can have this railroad, And that's what Cecil John Rhodes wanted to build. The guy that started, you know, Rhodesia. You say, oh, you didn't talk about him being a Freemason. I didn't want to talk about that. I didn't want to bring that up. He died of a heart attack. He was young anyway. All right. So they built this big, they wanted to build this big railroad. Unfortunately, Germany had some colonies in the way. They got rid of that problem later. All right. Now, oh, well, everything was wonderful, right? Not exactly wonderful. This brings us to the modern South Africa. Well, you see, like the Dutch, they don't like being taken over. So they're like angry all the time. Did he have something to do with the Rhodes Scholarship? Yeah, he had a little, yeah, he had a little something to do with that. A little bit. Yeah, he had something to do with that. All right, so all right. They had World War I. South Africa's on the British side, except the Dutch did try to rise up at the beginning of the war and overthrow the government, but they got beat down. A lot of Dutch helped the British. You know, you get these people, they'll team up with, you know how they say, oh yeah, the wind's blowing English, so I'll be pro-British all of a sudden. That's the ones you got to watch the politicians at. You know what I mean? So that didn't work. And then in 1939, of course, South Africa joined World War I. What do they call it? The World War Part Two. Yeah, World War II, whatever they call that. The World War Part Two. And, you know, they beat the Germans and all that. All right. Remember, I told you they were working on that project since 1899, and then they took care of it. All right, so then in 1944, they started going back against the Russians because they had been working against them to bring them down since 1815, and they're still working, but that's 2018 and Putin, and then they're trying to bring them down and all that. All right, but anyway, well, you know, the British say, we're democratic, we have democracy, we have elections, so everybody gets to vote. All the white people, you know, get to vote. So, but the Dutch say, no, we don't like it. 1910, we don't like it. 1920, we don't like it. 10 years later. 1930, we don't like it. 1940, we don't like it. So what we really have in South Africa was a showdown. Now you got to understand there's 10 black tribes, and they don't care about the British and the Dutch not liking each other. Like, why would they care? You know, they're just minding their own business, having their own institutions and whatever. So the main angst, the main anxiety is this like ongoing feud between the British and the Dutch. The British and the Dutch. Keep that in your mind. Paul says, like those southern cucks who hooked up with their captors after the War of Northern Aggression so they could have a nice life. Yeah, so they could capitalize on the situation. Right. Capitalize on the situation. They never could understand why people might have some animosity towards their behavior, you know. But anyway, so the Dutch keep saying, no. And then they got this idea, well, this is what we're going to do. This is what we're going to do, literally. We don't like the British, and they don't like us. They don't like us. And this is what we're going to do. So they had this plan, and then they take control in 1948. There's a big election. You know how these parliamentary countries work. You win the election, you're in the majority, you get to pick the prime minister, and you control the government. So in 1948, the Dutch, or as they called themselves, the Afrikaners, the Dutch people, they take the Calvinists, they take control of the government. 1948 election. And they're very revolutionary. They say, oh, okay, we're going to make a new South Africa. And what we mean by that is we're going to it's like de-evolution, devolve the country. You say, what do you mean, devolve the country? Well, okay, they say we have this new plan called apartheid, apartness. The British say, what does that mean, apartness? Brandon Dvorak says you should do a video on how the left wing has gone crazy. What do you mean, gone crazy? That's new? Valentin says, hello, Ron. Hello, Valentin. All right. So the Dutch say in 1948, haha, we took over, we have a majority, and we are going to change this country big time. And the British over there in London say, ooh, awa chihuahua. Now they're weak at this time because World War II. So England is not exactly strutting around with a swagger stick, you know, like they used to be. They're kind of like what you say. They're kind of like shook, like people say on TV. They're kind of shook. They've been through a lot. So they're trying to keep things together. You know, they lost Ireland in 1949. Ireland broke away completely. Well, not Northern Ireland, but the majority of the country. And said, we're a Republican. We don't want to be part of this British thing that's been going on for hundreds of years. And the Dutch say, look, here's how it's going to work in South Africa. Now the British say, oh, no, 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 no. Let's all get together. We can work it all out, you know. We're going to send Princess Elizabeth down there, and she's going to tour the country, and everything will be wonderful. You see, we'll work it all out completely, have it all spiffy and fabulous in almost every way. So Princess Victoria goes down there to South Africa and makes a tour. Her father was becoming very ill with cancer. And she says, you know, oh, you know, we want to modernize South Africa, and we have to look at all the options and possibilities and various particularities, options, situations as they may come up. And she says, you know, if I'm the queen, if I ever become the queen of South Africa, we must look at the world in a more modern sense, you know, not in this Dutch Calvinist sort of prehistoric caveman, subhuman sort of a non-British sense of the word. You know, we must bring about, you know, more developed change as we look at it, you know, and go to the Derby and do the horse races and whatnot, you know. And so the English down there in Cape Town and Durban say, oh, most certainly, we never did like the Dutch people. They're still radical and hot-tempered, and they didn't like things like we like to do. So sound like a modern American. Why is it more Dutch than British heritage in South Africa? Well, it's both, you see. The English say, oh, right on, we must, oh, righto, we must be loyal to the Queen, have predominantly British marmalade and chutney on the toast, and drink more preferable British coffee and teas and all this sort of thing. You kind of have the Dutch, their base commonalities, all this type of deplorable expressions of human imperfection, you see. So so the Dutch say, oh, here she comes. We don't want to hear this. We don't like these people. We don't care about England and the British heritage and all these things. We don't care about that. So the Dutch decide, no, 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 we don't care. You can send Queen Elizabeth, and then even the Queen Mother, well, eventually the Queen Mother, but Queen Elizabeth goes down there. I'm talking about the Queen, you know what I mean, the lady who died in 2002, you know, the Queen Mother. She's down there saying, oh, all these things have to be worked out. It's not terribly bad, you see. And then one of the Dutch people told, one of the Dutch guys, one of these patriots, you know, these Dutch patriots told Queen Elizabeth, he says, I've always hated England because you stole our country. like at a dinner party, he's like looking at her. I've always hated your country because you stole our country. And she said, oh, we feel the same way in Scotland. That's how we feel, you know. You give the most informative beer review. I always enjoy your beer review, says Mythanthropic One. South African beers are not good, says Valentin George. Thank you, guys. All right, so let's go on. So the Dutch say, no, no, we don't want to hear about all these things. We don't care about hot cross buns and pork pie and Boxing Day. We don't care. To hell with all that. They say, no, 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 no. We're going to take South Africa and we're devolving the country. Now, what I mean is we're devolving it. We're going to say, okay, we got the 10 Bantu tribes, or black tribes, as they say. All right, colored tribe. Colored meant British and black mix. Because you had a lot of, in Cape Colony, you had a lot of mixed race, which they call coloreds. C-O-L-O-U-R-E-D. Colored. The UK is a nanny state. Okay, well, I don't want to get into all that. So, all right. This is the South Africa, the Dutch plan. We're going to make Cape Colony. You can have the colored people, the mixed race, and the British, and they can do all whatever British people do. We don't care. And then you can have Durban and Natal, and they can do all those British things, which we are indifferent about. We don't care what they do. And then the Zulus can be Zulus and do dances and have disagreements with each other, and we don't care. And Lesotho can be its own country, and Swaziland can be its own country, but we've got 10 other tribes. Well, nine other tribes besides the Zulus. So this is what the Dutch say with apartness. We're going to eventually, over the next 5, 6, 7 decades, we're going to slowly break South Africa down into separate homelands or tribal lands where each tribal group will have its own country. Imagine this, they're going to break it apart into separate self-governing countries. Kind of like Ireland, you know, is its own country, and then England is its own country. The British say, oh no. Misanthropic One said they have the strictest laws of most Western countries. Yeah. Well, you know, I got to get some more water, but we're going to finish this up. Well, you know, all hell broke loose then. Well, you know, hey. The British say, you're not breaking this union apart. This place is going to stay united, and eventually it's going to be a big multicultural paradise. The British have this different idea. No, all the races are coming together. The Indians from India, the Pakistanis, the Chinese, the Asians, the whites, the Bantu, the black tribes, they're going to all come together as a big united, big blue marble, a big stew, a humanary stew of multicultural paradise. And the Dutch say, I don't think so. Paul says, ain't gonna play Sun City. Yeah, right. Now, the British are stupid people, says Mythanthropic One. Oh no, you'll never hear me say the British are stupid people. I might say a lot of things about the British, but you'll never hear me say stupid. Which is funny because the British are the biggest classicist of them all. Oh, Paul, you have a French last name, so I know. Okay, now, well, you know, all hell's going to break loose now, right? The British say, this cannot be. You cannot have this devolution. The Dutch say, we are going to have it. We're in control, and we want a democratic election. British say, democracy only matters when it serves our purposes. Don't you understand how democracy works? All right. So this goes on for like 12 years. They keep conflicting with each other, arguing, fighting, all this commotion. The Dutch said, we don't care what you do. It's going to happen. That's it. It's happening. And you can deal with it or not deal with it. So the British say, oh, no. They send one of their prime ministers down there. as the 1960s begin, he says, oh, well, South Africa and the whole continent is undergoing changes here. And he makes the famous Winds of Change speech. The winds of change have arrived in the continent of Africa. And he makes the famous Winds of Change speech. The winds of change are sweeping across the continent. All the old ideas must pass away. New ideas coming into play. Well, the British down in Cape Town and Durban say, yes, yes, oh, yes, we must have winds. We must have changeable winds, winds which bring change and progress. And we were just discussing this over dinner in the lodge, last week. The Grand Master, we talked, so wonderfully about, he made a wonderful speech. I was impressed, and I was almost brought to tears about this Winds of Change speech where we all brothers. And then the Dutch say, no, we're not going to have change. We're going to have change, but according to the Afrikaner way, you see. So then it comes to a head. 1961, the Dutch say, this is it. We cannot. The Dutch said, we can't deal with these people. We don't even like these people. We can't stand these people. I mean, we're both white, but we can't stand them. We despise these English people. So they had just a tiny little majority. They had a big election, and they had this special referendum, you see. They say, well, okay. Should South Africa remain, I don't know, something like that. I can't remember. You can look it up. Should South Africa remain a dominion, a British realm? It's called a realm. It's a self-governing territory, kind of like country, like Canada today. You could call it that. Or should it become a republic? And just a little bitty majority voted yes, we're going to be a republic. I don't know, it was like 52 to 48, something like that. Oh boy, now it's really going to get bad. So South Africa decides we're leaving the British family of nations. We didn't even want to be in the first place. So all the English people are angry. Well, most of the English people are angry. We don't want to leave the British Commonwealth. The Dutch say we never wanted to be part of it. So South Africa is declared a republic in 1961. Remember this, 1961. We are now the Republic of South Africa. We're going to have a president who we elect, and we're not going to have a king, a queen. We don't want these people from London bothering us, telling us how to live. They can go to hell as far as we're concerned. We can't stand these people. My grandfather fought against them. And they put my grandmother in a concentration camp, and my aunt died of typhus fever. I can't stand these people. Okay. And so that's the end of the story, and everybody went home happy, right? I don't think so. Well, then don't forget about the Cold War. I hope you didn't forget about the Cold War. You say, what does Russia have to do with South Africa? Well, nothing. Except that Russia and communist China wanted to spread, communism, and the United States wanted to spread imperial. What did I just say? I meant to say democracy. I don't know where I get these crazy ideas. I kept imperial. Can't say it. What's wrong? You say you drank that IPA. I know. Don't blame me. All right, I'm going to try again. The United States and Great Britain wanted to spread imperial democracy around the world. I knew I'd get it right. Democracy. Right, democracy around the world. Democracy. So the United States said, ooh, you can't break the country up into different countries. The Dutch say, why not? Everybody will get to rule their own country. Each black tribe will have their own leader. They can make their own laws. They could rule themselves. They could do whatever they want. Then the two white tribes, the Dutch and the English, who don't really like each other, and their lifestyles don't really mesh too well, the English can be down there doing their own thing. having their strip joints and their girly magazines, and then we can have our churches and magazines about soil types and how to make the best wooden shoes or whatever, you know, and be very stodgy and very buttoned up and old fashioned. And so what if we're that way? We're not making the English do what we want. They can have a disco, a go-go, and do what they want. We don't care. All right. The British say, what can we do about these people? These people, these damnable people. Oh, we got it. They're a bunch of racists. Now you see, that's the magic word. So the British in 1961 say, oh, you know, you Dutch people are a bunch of racists. You hate other races. You're trying to hurt other races. The Dutch say, we're not trying to hurt other races. We're trying to give them their own country. What are you talking about? Are you crazy? Oh, no. And the Soviet Union says, you're a bunch of racists. And Communist China says, you're a bunch of racists. And the United States says, you're a bunch of racists. Now you say, wait, stop. Now we got you. Now you're trapped. Now you don't know where to go. Because you say in 1961, during the height of the Cold War, we got you now. You're saying the United States and Great Britain, two democratic countries, and the Soviet Union and Communist China, two communist countries, those four teamed up against South Africa and called them racist and said their government needed to be brought down and be made multicultural. Hey, look, I didn't write the script. They wrote the script. I wasn't born. Don't ask me why two anti-communist countries and two communist countries teamed up to bring down South Africa. Don't ask me that. Ask them that. Okay? Now, there's all kind of comments, but I can't. The ironic that it was exactly 100 years since the start of the war, the Civil War, so-called Civil War. Ah, right. I didn't think about that. We're spreading, Paul says, we're spreading democracy. We're making the world safe for democracy. They say that on TV. Okay, now, you know what's going to happen. So like, oh my gosh, it's a big controversy. Now you got Nelson Mandela, who was educated in a racist school and went to a racist university and got a racist education and got a degree in law and didn't have to pay for it and had a really productive and not to say, and let's say lucrative law career in the racist country, and had a wife who he dumped in the 1950s so he could marry a beauty queen who was better looking and more radical. But you say, why bring that up? I shouldn't have brought that up. Forget that. I want to retract that. Now, who was in cahoots with Joe Slovo, the head of the South African Communist Party. And I know I shouldn't bring that up. Just because Nelson Mandela was in cahoots with communist organizations is not germane to the story, and I shouldn't bring that up. And I'm sorry, I apologize for bringing it up, even though he made speeches standing in front of a hammer and sickle flag, and he cried his eyes out like a baby when Joe Slovo died of cancer. Nelson Mandela crying like a baby on TV because his communist financier and theoretician and sponsor died. I'm not going to bring that up. I'm not going to mention it, so forget about it. Well, so as soon as South Africa becomes a republic, the agitation starts. You say, that's very predictable. Well, isn't it? And there's the Sharpstown massacre, so-called, where the South African police, who are just bored one day, you know how these people are, they just were bored. The police in South Africa said, golly, it's a boring day. Let's go shoot a bunch of innocent people for no particular reason and make sure that the news media is there. And so they just went out to Sharpstown and started shooting everybody for no reason and killed all these innocent children who were just buying candy and giving gifts to old people. And ABC News just happened, and BBC News just happened to be there, because that happens sometimes. And so this racist government killed all these people because they were bored and had nothing to do. And Nelson Mandela, who was minding his own business, trying to have a law career, and was a member of the African National Congress. I mean, okay, yeah. Every now and then he would make a speech saying people ought to set off time bombs and murder people and, set off a bomb at a shopping center and kill people and shoot people who are conspiring with the South African or working with the South African. I mean, yeah, if you want to nitpick, and I don't think it's fair to nitpick. This poor guy, Nelson Mandela, this poor lawyer, a great guy in every way, a saint, really a saint, who occasionally he might say that people ought to commit acts of terrorism, kill children, set tires on fire on people's necks, and who had strong and decades-long irrevocable ties to communist organizations. I mean, we all have faults. You've probably advocated terrorism in your life. You've probably been in cahoots with communism. We all have, I'm sure. So then they arrest this poor guy. All he's trying to do is take over the country. I mean, we all try to take over the country sometimes. They put him in prison for terrorism. I mean, you can't even catch a break in this country, right? South Africa. It's not even fair. And if you can believe this story, he becomes an international celebrity in England and America and all around the world. He's a martyr, and he's a victim of racism. And you saw all these protests. You say, well, those were all leftist organizations. They were all leftist organizations tied with Cuba and the Soviet Union trying to help Nelson Mandela out. I mean, if you want to nitpick, okay. And you might say, well, his wife, Winnie, was deeply involved in in targeted murders and assassinations of killing children. Don't normal people do that from time to time? All right. It's just the way it goes. Sometimes you're involved in international terrorism and you're involved with communist groups. I mean, that's what people do. All right, so Nelson Mandela was in prison for 28 years. And you say, well, the ironic thing is that the South African government said they would let him out tomorrow if he would just come on TV and declare that terrorism was wrong and people should not go around murdering their enemies. And this man refused to do that. He refused to come on TV and say that people should not commit murder in the name of the revolution, the socialist proletarian revolution. Oh, well, he wouldn't do it. Okay. So this went on all through 1960, all through the 1970s, all through the 1980s. The South Africans say, we're never going to back down. We're never going to back down. We're, in the 1980s, they're saying, we're more than likely not going to back down. And then 1985, we're probably not going to back down. In 1988, well, we could back down. We might back down because, the United States started to put an economic embargo on South Africa. We're going to bring down your economy. Now, Ronald Reagan, and giving credit, he vetoed that when the United States Congress passed the Embargo Act against South Africa, where the United States would cut off all trade with South Africa to bring down their government and not allow each tribe to have their own country. Because what South Africa did in the 1970s, 80s, was they created new countries, Venda, Ciskei, Transkei, Botswana. They were starting to create actual countries with their own president, and each tribe could have their own leader. and their own internal self-government. Oh, I mean, you know how, I mean, that's racist, right? When you let people rule themselves, that's obviously racist. You say, well, you can make your own laws and live your own life and pursue your own destiny. You know, that's very racist. I think we know that. So, Ronald Reagan said, we're trying, what are we trying to do? Help communism around the world? So he vetoed that act. He vetoed the Embargo Act, but the Congress in the late 80s became democratically controlled majority. So they overrode his veto. And the United States started to put the screws down on South Africa. Now I didn't have much involvement in that back in those days. I wasn't involved. I mean, I got some magazines like the South African Panorama, April 1986. So like, you can't buy this at the store, obviously, but I got some of these magazines. It's a magazine from the, it's all about South Africa and how they were trying to create the new, see, there's the new countries, the self-governing Bantustans. And it's all about the curing people's eye diseases. The government was going to help people with eye, like trouble with glaucoma. And there's a music festival in Pretoria. So they're saying, look, in South Africa, they have music festivals. Don't believe all the stories you hear on TV, you know. And then there's an article about trying to help shipping around the world and trying to aid shipping technology, bring more products to different countries around the world, and containerized cargo. And then there's an article about farmers, and then how these South Africans were helping the native people with arts and crafts. Oh, you know, just all kind of articles. Very interesting. I read this stuff. How they built schools for people and schools to help people with problems in their lives and get a better life. And then there's another magazine here from March '86, South African Panorama magazine. Like I say, you can't buy it at the store. I just acquired the magazines. I tried to get other kids around the state to read it, but nobody would read it. Most students I went to high school with never heard of South Africa, except maybe they knew about it, that it was a country, but to say they knew about what was happening. But I tried to, you know, say, hey, read this. Try to learn about what's happening in our world today. But I couldn't get anybody interested, honestly. I tried, you know, at least I tried. This is about Expo 85. It was big, like a World's Fair they had down there. And then they had a history, the Battle of Diamond Hill. This is a very interesting article about how the Boers beat the living beat the doo-doo out of the British. It was an interesting article, Battle of Diamond Hill, and they have a map, battle map. And then all the heroes of the war. Whoops. So I thought it was a fascinating thing to let people read, you know, but unfortunately I couldn't get anybody interested. Beautiful photos, and then all the war memorials of all the people who had fought against the imperialists, you know. So and then there's the soldier in front of the flag, you know. So I didn't sell the dang magazine. Who was going to buy it anyway? I didn't buy the mag. I never bought these magazines. I never paid a penny for these magazines. I just I happened to acquire the literature, and there's art, you know, like a recreation of the founding of the Dutch countries. I was just trying to get people to read. Now, my grandmother went to South Africa in 1973, and I asked her what was Johannesburg like, and she wasn't favorable towards it. I won't tell you what her description was. She did go to the Zambezi River. She was in Portuguese East Africa the same year, and she met up with Rhodesians on the Zambezi River. They were talking about buying, they wanted to sell her diamonds. She did not buy the diamonds, but she was down in South Africa in 1973. It was an interesting little story, but I won't get into that. So anyway, let's see some comments before we wrap this. It's a long video, but it's a long story. You can't rush these things. I'll try to watch it the rest later, says Paul. Okay, Paul, I'm going to talk to you on the phone. Believe none of the stories you hear on TV. It doesn't matter what the story is. South Africa is the most developed country in Africa still, or Nigeria took over? Well, you know, it's like a roller coaster, you know, when it's going down. All right, so, well, you know, if your economy is collapsing, and remember now, you'd have half the voters are against this project. Got to remember that. The British people were, to a large, not completely, but to a large extent, not in favor of the devolution, the apartheid project. And so the Dutch start to, around 1976, they were helping Rhodesia fight against the whole big problem there. But they started to kind of like blink, you know what I mean? They started to kind of lose it, get a little, start to crack a little bit. So the Dutch say, maybe we should just go along and give in, you know, it's not worth it. So in the 80s, they start talking about, well, we might give in. Maybe we could talk about it. Maybe we could work it out. The British say, right. So you know what happened. In 1990, they let Mandela out of prison, even though he never renounced terrorism. He said, I'm never going to renounce terrorism. You can keep me in prison forever. I'm a hardcore, you know. I'm a hardcore comrade, you know. So they let him out. And when I saw that, I said, that's it. The show's over. They've got it. They've had it. I remember that day. I'll never forget it, you know. And he was making the communist salute, marching down the street. I said, that's it. Show is over. You lost it. Now, Rhodesia gave up the ghost, so to speak, in 1980. In 1980, they threw the towel in. They said, that's it. It's over. We're gone. That's it. Gone. Shot. Over. And that was it. And it became this landfill. You know, Rhodesia became a landfill. Zimbabwe, whatever, that thing. So then South Africa, 10 years later, you know, they tried to like buy time. They like sold Rhodesia off, say buy time, but it didn't work. You know, so 1990, they said, that's it. They took the towel, they threw it in. I said, well, you've had it. And then in 1994, they had the new election where everybody could vote, and they got rid of the new country, Venda, Transkei, Bafutta, Swan, and Ciskei. They just say, forget it. We'll just have one big South Africa again. You know, and all the left wing around the world say, hooray, you know, the multicultural paradise, the hammer and the sickle, you know, we are the world, we are the children, all of that. So I say, oh, yeah. You say, oh, you just don't want them all to be united. No, I love for people to be united, you know. Now, you might say, oh, you're just mad because of the incredibly increased amount of crime in South Africa since 1994, the last 24 years, this unbelievable amount of crime, rape, robbery, murder. Well, I mean, you know, that was predicted, but I don't see why you should bring. You might say, well, the country is in danger of maybe eventually running into they go from being the wealthiest country in Africa, and I mean really wealthy, and maybe in 2038 they might be begging for food with mass starvation. That's all you want to talk about. I mean, you know, if you want to nitpick about these things, like why would you take a country that is one of the richest countries in Africa, the richest country in Africa, Rhodesia was the second richest, and you want to turn them into hellholes, and all you want to do is complain about that? Yeah, you could say that, you know, it's like a nitpicking. And I'm in America. I'm neutral. I'm not part of all of this. I'm just watching it. You know what I'm saying? I'm watching. I mean, yeah, I mean, the magazines, but I was just an observer, right? I'm not out there on the battlefield after all. So what's the future? I don't know. And I'm not too confident. So the new government came into play in 1994. But the last thing I'm going to say, and then we're going to shut this off, it's so long, but it's a big story, big story. I always thought this was comical to myself. I remember back in 1985, 86, 87, the left wing, our left wing friends, you know, our friends who live under that hammer and sickle banner, they say, oh, we must boycott South Africa to destroy their economy so that they could have a people's government. I say, yeah. But at the same time, our friends on the left-hand course, the sinister course, they say, oh, we have to increase trade with Red China, Communist China, mainland China. We must increase trade with Cuba. We need to stop the embargo of Cuba so that their country can modernize and be exposed to the Western world. Now I said, isn't it strange that on the one hand, our friends on the left say we must totally boycott South Africa because they're bad, but at the same time, we must increase trade with Cuba because they're bad, which will make them better. I said, no, I have a feeling that you want to boycott South Africa because you want to destroy them and you hate their government. But you want to increase trade with Cuba, Fidel Castro's Cuba, because you have an affinity for communism, socialism, Marxism, Leninism. You see, that's what I discovered by just thinking about it. The left wants to increase trade with Red China, Cuba, because they have an affinity for that government. You see, and they know that it will strengthen that government. And I've been thinking about that for oh so many decades. Now let's read the comments and then we're finished. Believe none of the stories you hear on TV, no matter what the story is. Okay, I'll go along with that. Valentin George says South Africa is still, okay, we talked about that. Have I visited South Africa, Ron? I have never visited South Africa, no. Who are these left-wing friends? Oh, well, you know, Hillary Clinton, Joe Slovo, Bernie Sanders, Sean Penn. You know what I mean? You heard of these people, right? What is yo? Me, I do not know your opinion on Mexico's new president. Well, you're socialist, so I think you can figure out where I stand on that, right? Well, you know, that's Mexico's problem. Unfortunately, it'll probably become our problem, right? Thanks for watching this video production. I'll be very, very, very curious about your comments. Thanks, and you take care.